Hello, 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 and welcome to Kindred Skulls. My name is Gregg Blake, and I am delighted to be here today. We have a very special guest. I want to start right off by introducing Luke Braun, friend of the show. You can find him on his amazing Locked On Vikings podcast, as well as Minnesota Football Party. And he also has a Patreon at patreon.com/Luke Braun NFL. Friend of the show, longtime friend of Matt and I. How are you doing today, man? We're so glad to have you.
Doing good. What is up, boys?
What is up?
Long time listener of Kindred Skulls. I've been listening to just about everyone since probably the start of this last season.
Well, that's extremely flattering. I buried the lead a little bit. Let me also just pull in Matt Freese, my co-host. Matt, how you doing?
Doing great, guys. You know, long-time listener, Locked On Vikings, so we got a kind of a cross-listen pollination here. Really excited to have Luke on the show. Really excited for this week. Obviously, draft week's always one of the most fun times of year. I think if you're a fan of any football team, draft week's great because literally your team gets better during the week. Every single football team gets better with the players that they add throughout the draft. Mm-hmm. Maybe they don't get as better as you hope they would have, but they will get better, by the end of the week.
Yeah, everyone gets new toys to play with. Whether they work out or not is whatever, but yeah, it can only be an addition.
It's an exciting time of year, delights the imagination, and for Minnesota Vikings fans, it's our Super Bowl. This is it. This is a big celebration every year.
No, that's a Lions mentality. That's our Super Bowl is the moment in like mid-November when we're about 8th in Super Bowl odds. That's our Super Bowl.
Beating the Packers.
The win against the Packers as is canon is our Super Bowl.
Yeah. That's true.
No, I agree with you guys 100%. I love the draft. It's just there's really only positive vibes unless you draft like Will Levis or something. Oh, I led it a little bit. All right,
takes.
Oh God, takes. Okay, awesome. Well, look. Pleasantries out of the way. Let's dive in here. Let's get into the nitty gritty of the 2023 NFL draft. Let's start off by addressing the elephant in the room. There's been a lot of buzz, even before buzz season started, that this might be the year Minnesota Vikings dip into the quarterback pool in a real way. In a real way, take a big swing on somebody. It's first time that I think in about pretty much since Kirk arrived that we've had legitimate buzz that seems real. This might be the year. All the right people are checking in. So it seems like that's going to be, at least on the table for us. We never know what's going to happen. We were talking before the show started. The last time we had Luke on the pod was during our live draft coverage, which nobody saw, in the Justin Fields draft. And I believe, Luke,
it was a good time.
Yeah, it was a great time. And I believe you were on
when the Bears took Fields. Yeah.
When the Bears took Fields. And we all thought that we were trading up. And it was very exciting because we all liked Fields. It was like, oh, this is amazing. We're going to get Fields. And we didn't get him, obviously. And, it was very disappointing. You could see all of our faces registering that disappointment. But here we are, a couple years later. And we're facing potentially that moment again. Let's talk about the QBs a little bit. Now, I am going to be out of the way most of the day here listening to you two because you've done way more research than me and you're both smarter than me and I want to hear what you have to say. But I did want to take a little bit of time right at the top of the show just to rant a little bit about my favorite prospect in the entire draft.
Hold up real quick, Greg. I just can't tell you guys, the listeners, how excited I've been to hear what you're about to hear from Greg for months at this point. This is going to be
we need some just rabid fan passion.
Yeah.
Let's get it.
Yeah, this is going to be extremely clippable. Like, it will be on Twitter as a clip. You guys are going to love this.
So now I'm going to blow it. You've built this up too much. No, I'll just... What's that, Luke?
I said let it rip.
Oh, let it rip. All right, I'll let it rip. Okay, so look, Let me start by saying that I can't remember the last time that Matt and I both liked a player as much as we like this player. Like Matt and I almost always disagree, especially on quarterbacks, or specifically on. We agree about a lot of other players. Quarterbacks, for some reason, Matt and I have just never really, whether we're chatting, texting with each other, talking, whatever. It's always been a little like, oh, I don't really see that. Both of us have liked this guy from the jump. I remember watching him when I was really into Dameon Pierce because in fantasy, and so I was watching a lot of Dameon Pierce, and I remember seeing this kid pop up, and I've already told you who it is, but I'm going to build up to it anyway. I remember seeing him pop up a little bit at the end of last college season and being like, who's that guy? He's really big. And then this year I caught some University of Florida games early, and I saw Anthony Richardson do stuff on the football field that I can't really. I've seen players do versions of it, but I've never seen anybody do what he was doing out there. To be as big as he was, and moving the way he was, and not being a gimmicky player, being a passer, being he just had so many elements to his game, and I was like, and I kept turning into University of Florida games because I was just like, what is this guy? Like this because, and Matt knows this about me. I play Madden, pretty much every couple of years I buy a Madden game and then I play the crap out of it for like 2 years, and I'm always designing quarterbacks. I've been doing this since I was a little kid, just like designing a big, strong, fast, strong-armed quarterback every single time. I can't quit it. I've always created quarterbacks, and literally the guy I've been creating my entire life is Anthony Richardson. I've been creating this player in these games to be able to play with a game-breaking set of talent. Okay, and I was watching him play, and I know the stats weren't there. I knew they weren't there even while it was happening, but I just feel connected to Anthony Richardson, and I want this so badly for our team. And you guys know I've made no secret that I've not been super happy as a fan for the last few years, and I've wanted us to take a big swing. I want Kwesi to put his balls on the table and go make a move for Anthony Richardson. This is the year. Go do it. Make it happen, Kwesi. Make my dreams come true. I want to see that young man molded by a modern quarterback head coach who understands how to work with young guys. This is the guy. This is it. Let's make the move. Is that clippable enough for you?
Yes, it absolutely is. It absolutely is, Greg. And just a couple things I want to add there. The reason I think we agree on Anthony Richardson, and I think Luke's there as well, is because typically when we've disagreed on prospects in the past, it's been toolsy guys who don't have everything there from a process perspective, which I find pretty important. And Richardson is not 100% of the way there from a process perspective, but you see that he understands the football field and he's able to process what's happening in front of him like on a regular basis with generally good technique. Now, or generally good decision making, I should say. The technique, the footwork in particular, the accuracy issues, even on platform accuracy, like in general, are a problem. Right? Like there is rawness there that needs to be worked out of him, and that takes drilling and time to do. But the raw tools combined with what you see from him with his already good pocket management, like despite the fact that he's not accurate, he doesn't even get lined up. And Luke, you've studied him a bit deeper than I have, I think, so you can add a couple more things of what would like to see him improve from that perspective. But like he shows the base level that's required of an NFL quarterback to do those things and to get that improvement, and that's what excites me about him. Also, he's the 6th youngest player in this draft, for the record.
Yeah, and from like a testing perspective, alien. He tested better than Cam Newton. Like this is I've just been going on to the Math Bomb site, the RAS site, and just finding the funniest comps I can figure out. Like, what if Josh Allen had a better 40? Did you think it was possible? Because it is. Yeah, as an athlete, it's super cool. But like what you said, Matt, yeah, it's much more than that, because I think a lot of people will look at that and say, well, I don't care if he's fast. Can he play quarterback? My process with these guys in the draft a lot of times is focusing more on the weaknesses than the strengths. What is wrong with you, and can I put up with it, or can I fix it, is like a big part of my thing, because I think a lot of draft analysis is looking at, okay, he's big and he's fast, and I'm really, really excited about that. Okay, what separates him from all the other guys who are big and fast? And I think with Richardson, you get full field reads. That Florida offense was not a gimmicky Mickey Mouse college offense. It was a bad offense because there was a ton of bad players in Florida. But if anything, that works to your credit with Richardson, right? You say, okay, well, he kind of overcame this and that, or he had to run around a lot because there was so much pressure.
I don't want to cut you off, Luke, but can I also add playing from behind most games?
Yeah.
So just
right.
For
and there's like one good guard in there or something like that, right? But everybody else is either like too young, or that it's a not a good team, and I don't think it's a well-coached team either. Watching that offense, I didn't like the structure of it at all. I don't think it really took advantage of Richardson's strengths that well. But when I see what the weaknesses are, I think accuracy is the one you have to bring up. He does just miss too much, probably too much to be a day one starter, right? And I don't think anybody expects him to be at 20 and 13 games of experience. But he knows what he's looking at. You can tell he knows what he's looking at when he takes off and runs. And this is a big thing, especially for some of the old folk, that they don't like running quarterbacks, which is funny, especially if you grew up watching Tarkenton. You should love it. But when he runs, I think it's pretty judicious. Like, I think it's not a panicky instinct. I think it's really, okay, we're running, Yankee down the field, like two deep routes, and they nailed it over. Those throws aren't there. I'm taking off. And I think that was an LSU touchdown that he housed from like 60 out. He just saw a lane and went, and that it was like an active decision. And sometimes you can be your own check down in a way, which can help open up other stuff in the offense. And that can be, the whole adage that's like running gives you a floor. So with all of that, if he can be more accurate, we have a Josh Allen, right? We just have, okay, cool. He's an alien superstar. That's the face of your franchise now. And that's the question, is can you make him more accurate? And I think for me, and the reason I focus on weaknesses more is because I think it can help me better project, okay, well, does he get more accurate? Well, I can see why he is not accurate. And for me, at least I can guess, it's because his base is really uncontrolled and wild. His feet are all over the place. He doesn't step into things in a very calm and controlled manner. His dropbacks are a little messy too, and a little bit imprecise. And that means that he doesn't get the torque out of his lower half that you want to get. So he's all arm in it. So it's all arm strength on these, and it's a lot harder to control your accuracy that way. That is drillable. Like, that's something that I think, footwork can be drilled. Accuracy in general can't always be helped. We'll talk about another quarterback later who I don't think I see becoming more accurate. But footwork can be helped, and that will improve his accuracy. And even if you just get him to modestly accurate, he doesn't need to be throwing dimes all over the place every single time. But even if you just get modest consistency, you have a freaking superstar, and that it just rocks. He's wherever he goes, as long as he gets the time he needs to work that out. It's really hard to see a guy that talented not making some noise in the league somehow, even if it ends up being a Lamar Jackson, a Trey Lance situation where, all right, we're just going to run 80% of the time, and you're just we're running QB power, and this is a high school offense. Like, okay, well, Ravens have done that for years. So, that can absolutely work.
Yep. And I think that we've got the minds to be able to put that kind of thing together. Matt, what were you going to say?
And first of all, that offense, that's a temporary offense sort of thing. That is you run this while they're getting while they're getting acclimated to the league, right? That's what Lamar Jackson did the last 8 games of his rookie year, where it was basically, we're going to run the ball with Lamar 80% of the time. And then it developed into he was a phenomenal passer his second year. Now, that passing game never progressed beyond that, but I don't think that's really Lamar's fault.
Sure.
I'm a Lamar stan myself, but I guess the major question I have with this quarterback class, right, is what, and I'll pose this to both of you guys. If you're in the GM chair, right, you're Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, and you're talking with the Cardinals say you can agree to an outline of a trade that costs 3 first-round picks, right? So this year's first, next year's first, the 2025 first, and a second-round pick next year, the 2024 second-round pick. Okay, that is more than what the 49ers gave up to get Trey Lance, right? Where they moved from, I believe it was 12 to 3 a couple years ago. They gave up 3 firsts and a third-round pick. So obviously we're moving further up. But I think you can get that deal in there and make it work if you're the Vikings going up to the Cardinals. Do you make that trade, and or for which quarterbacks are you willing to make that trade, if anybody? Luke?
Stroud for sure. I think Stroud is QB1. I think if I were the Panthers, I would take him. I get why they're taking Young though, like that's fine. But I have Stroud at QB1. So Stroud for sure. I think with Richardson, I want to be double extra sure that I have to. If it's the case, if God himself comes down to me and says, yeah, you're doing this, or the Colts are taking him at 4.
In this case,
all right, I'll take my lumps.
In this case, QBs go 1 and 2. So whatever
QBs go 1 and 2,
of
so I have
quarterbacks
to.
go 1 and 2. So basically, you have to.
So we're assuming it's Stroud or Richardson drops to 3 for the sake of the scenario.
It would have, since Young is one of them. Yeah, it would have
any
to
be. Any of the top 4 quarterbacks can drop to 3, but 2 of them are off the board. 2 of the other ones are off the board for this scenario.
Got it. I would do it for Young too. Then, if that's the case, I'm just assuming that he's gone because the cat's been kind of out of the bag. But yeah, kind of those top 3, I would. I guess I'd take my lumps and do it. I would hate to be sitting in Kwesi's chair 3 years from now, getting fired, going, yeah, but I saved my 7th round pick in 2024, or my 2nd round pick in 2024. While Anthony Richardson's a Pro Bowl. Like, I would hate to do that. Like, when it comes to quarterback, look, when it comes to corner, when it comes to receiver or whatever, and I go, yeah, I got a guy that maybe I'm not as happy with, but I got more value. You can do that calculus. But at quarterback, it's a little bit more just go get your freaking franchise guy and figure it out later. Get your first round pick back another way. I don't know.
If you're not swinging for the fences at quarterback, I don't know what you're doing. And here's the thing. We have Kirk Cousins. We're stuck with him for another year, right? And we've there's been a lot of talk about we want to develop somebody. We want to bring that young player in. We don't want a ton of pressure on them, which I actually I'm all about. I'm totally into that. If that's the position you're in, you're not going to be in that position next year. You're not. I mean, Kirk's not going to be on the team. So, I mean, are you talking about starting Nick Mullins? I don't think so. So,
right.
Like, you're going into 2024 and you're saying you're going, maybe I like Drake May, maybe I like Caleb Williams, and I think there are teams doing that. If you look at like the way Seattle's behaving, it feels like the Raiders are doing this a little bit. The Commanders and the Bucks are going, yeah, we'll limp through with Kyle Trask or Sam Howell, but really what we want is a 2024, and they're just really in love with somebody that didn't come out this year, right. And that might be the way that they handle this. And it's valid, but I think they're going to try.
It is valid, but you're going to have to start that kid most likely if you're the Vikings, and that doesn't fit at least what they're saying publicly. That they want to develop someone. So it feels like this is the year. And I'll tell you this, for any 3 of those guys, I mean, I have my personal favorite. I haven't felt this way about a player since this guy right here. Okay? I haven't felt this way.
Oh my goodness.
I have not felt I have not felt this.
I'll never quit you, Teddy.
I'll never quit.
No.
I've never felt this.
I should go get mine.
I haven't felt this way.
I'm gonna go get mine.
Do it. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Well, getting that, I'll just finish my answer to your question by saying, even if it's not him, yeah, hell yeah, and I'll throw in Dalvin Cook and I'll throw in Zarius Smith too. I'll get it done, whatever it takes, because I think you've got Kirk on the roster. You can't do a lot else, and I think waiting for next year there just might be even more question marks. We might lose a lot of games this year. We might win some games this year. We might be middle of the first round. We have to make that trade anyway. Like there's a lot of ways that there's too many questions about 24. We've got this crossroads. It just makes a ton of sense. And Teddy baby.
Teddy
I
forever.
This is the year. Teddy forever. At least until we get one of these kids in here. I'm saying do it. Do it. No question.
I should get my Teddy jersey out. I bought my Teddy jersey after he was no longer a Minnesota Viking because I just love him that much. Like that's
strong.
His story is so incredible just in terms of coming back from that and like the positivity he held throughout that entire thing. Like I love it. But so I agree with you guys that I would make that trade up to number 3 for those 3 quarterbacks. I would not do it for Will Levis, who I think becomes a more interesting conversation at our next scenario. But ultimately, with it, I like Richardson the best as a Vikings option just because of the swing for the fences, right? Like CJ Stroud is probably, to me, I agree with you, Luke, the best overall quarterback in this draft. Like I think Bryce Young's a little bit overrated because he kind of has, like, he's not that accurate of a passer. People just talk about him like the only question he has is that he's way undersized. Right, but I think he's got a couple more questions than that. And CJ Stroud is by far the most accurate passer in this draft. Like he's the most accurate, consistent passer. Bryce Young kind of plays street ball a little bit too much for my liking, and he's doing that at Alabama. But again, I'd trade up to 3 for Bryce Young as well. Like all 3 of these quarterbacks, I think I'd trade up for 3. Richardson, you're doing it for the ceiling. Stroud, you're doing it for the consistency. And Bryce Young, you're doing it for the playmaking, which is kind of the consistency and also the ceiling. I don't know really how to put that. But
guys,
speaking of Frank Tarkenton, I mean,
yeah.
What about his S2? What about Stroud's S2,
oh my
guys?
God.
I
don't know what to do about that, and partly I don't know what to do about that because I don't believe that's his actual score. Like, just based off of the information that's come out from the S2 guy, like, it sounds like that's not true about Stroud. If it is true, I think probably it's a concern, but I don't know anything about the test, and also, my understanding is that's, like, one of the 10 tests that they go through as part of the whole S2 cognition is that 18th percentile score reported. So I don't know what to do with it. Teams probably have a better idea what to do with it, and maybe it does matter.
I know what to do with it. Crumple it up and throw it in the trash. Okay.
It's too new. And that's the problem. With a test like this, I was talking to my dad about this. He actually did like this sort of cognitive test. He worked at a company that like developed these kinds of tests many, many years ago. And he said, we would kind of know if that test was really doing what it needed to do. And you'd have to apply it differently to different industries, of course, right? Because visual processing in football is going to be way different than visual processing in, air traffic control or something like that. But to really know if it applies and is instructive, he said it took like 50 to 100 data points before you had any idea. And then you probably want like 1,000 data points to refine. We've got like a dozen data points right now. We have one class worth of quarterbacks, and then that we have seen their rookie years. So we have absolutely no data on if this works. All we know is that it is a cognitive visual processing test. We have no idea anything else. I think putting a whole bunch of stock into it is
ridiculous,
uncomfortably close to just like phrenology. You don't know what the process is at all.
Absolutely.
What does it do? I took a cognitive test. You might have just played a children's game and called it a cognitive test. Who knows?
I'll tell you what we do know.
That could have just been a couch that you were a little bit too excited about. Like,
I'll tell you what we do know about CJ Stroud is that he's really, really fucking good at football.
So there we go.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. You want to let's move it along a little bit here. So we talked about those top picks. We blew our loads about the guys we really like at quarterback. Let's say, things don't totally work out. The top 3 picks are immediately quarterbacks. We're not in the mix. We couldn't, we didn't move up, whatever. And someone's dropping that 10 to 12 range, we'll call it. Okay. most likely, even though there's been some buzz about him going top 3, I think it's most likely Will Levis is starting to kind of, drop a little bit. The weirdo who drinks mayonnaise or whatever. Let's say he's hovering there at around 10 to 12, and the cost is going to be a couple of firsts and a third. I think, Matt, that's kind of the historical value.
If you model it off the Bears trade, it's the Bears trade for Justin Fields, I should mention. It's 2 firsts, a 4th, and a 5th round pick. And that's the resources the Vikings are able to give up too, because we don't have a 3rd next year. Or we don't have a 3rd this year or next year. Sorry, we do have a 3rd this year. My bad. But we don't have one next year. And I don't think the team would want to give up 87 this year to get it done because of the limited draft picks that they have. So It would be 1st round pick, 4th round pick, next year's 5th round pick is what the Bears trade was.
And next year's first.
And next year's first, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say it's... Obviously, we know what the answer would be for all of us if it was Anthony Richardson. So for just for the sake of conversation, let's say it's Will Levis. Do you feel comfortable, Luke? Let's start with you. Do you feel comfortable making that move up there? Make sure you get your guy, or are you going to sit pat at 23 at that point?
So, are we asking what I would do or what I think will happen?
You're Kwesi.
I'm Kwesi. I don't have that high a grade on Levis. I don't think that he's worth taking there. I'll even skip ahead here. I would not take him at 23, which was actually the situation I was presented with in the ultimate mock, which you can listen to the whole thing, by the way. Levis was there at 23, and I traded out because for me, I don't think he has to hit his 99th percentile outcome to improve upon Kirk Cousins for me. For me, he has a lot of the same traits and flaws as Kirk Cousins and a lot of the same advantages as Kirk Cousins. He's got a bigger arm and he can run a little better. For those things, which I think both of those advantages are marginal, being able to hit a 60-yard bomba versus being able to hit a 40-yard bomba, which Kirk can do, is marginal to me. And then I think while Levis does have enough running talent, there were read option and stuff at Kentucky that we can be a little bit more excited about. It's not electric. It doesn't explode off the tape to me. It's a little bit. I was just watching Jaron Hall. He's in my brain a little bit, and I think that's actually really similar athletic talent. It's functional. It's there. For those marginal effects to really be the difference, you have to kind of project Levis's accuracy issues to go away, his pressure issues to go. You have to project every weakness to go away, and then also all of his strengths translate. And that feels a little bit like, well, if everything works out and nothing is bad about him, he's a great prospect. So I don't have that grade on him. That said, I super understand why a lot of people do and what people see in him and all that. And I think there's also a lot on the other side where he's getting a little bit too much hate because he's the weird Mayo coffee guy and he played in a weird offense in his last season. Although I don't hold that offense against him very much. In fact, I kind of think having a huge sample of quick game to show that he can play rhythmic quick game is actually probably helping him a lot. Because there are teams that need to just run an offense next year, and here's one you can run. But for the Vikings, who have the luxury of sitting a guy for a year, teaching him, developing something with a little higher ceiling, I would rather take my chances in 2024, and somebody else can go do the Levis thing.
I think in general that's a fairly good argument, right? And it's hard to pick apart, and it's kind of a preference thing and a projection thing on Levis's part. And one of the things Levis has going against him is he's going to be 24 at the start of this NFL season, right? So this is not like Anthony Richardson, who's currently 20 years old, will be just over 21 years old week 1 of this year, right? Where you have a guy who hasn't played a ton in college and is raw, and you need to develop. It's an older player. And I think another thing, and I'm going to argue against my ultimate point here, so ignore me for a minute, is a lot of these guys who have developed, whether it's Justin Herbert or who have, I would say, quickly proven to be better than what their pre-draft profile was, right? They were big physical toolsy players who had questions, right? And Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, and even a Jordan Love, who we haven't seen that much from, were young coming out of school, right? These aren't old guys who are 24 years old heading into their rookie year. With that being said, with Levis, I think the combination of 2021 being a significantly better year for him with the negative of a poorly coached offense. Now, I also agree with you, Luke, where NFL teams are going to look at the offense he was running last year and be like, okay, this translates 1-to-1, and NFL teams like nothing than not doing work, right? When it comes to these prospects, they don't want to have to try to project and look at these funky offenses and try to make things work there. They like it's easy. Like, I'm going to call that play on game day, right? They like that sort of stuff.
And everybody has stick. Everybody's got slants, and he ran a ton of that.
The thing is, the physical tools for Levis, I think I just rate them more highly than you do, particularly running the ball. Like, I think he can be that, maybe not quite Josh Allen, but a Justin Herbert level player with his legs and in terms of his ability to extend plays and make throws on the run, which is something that we don't really have from Kirk, right? Kirk's great at throwing on the move when he has like a planned motion or something like that, but he's really not that great of a thrower when he is actively scrambling on the run. Like, that creation ability is not something he has. And Levis, I know, also takes a ton of sacks. So it's like, but is that creation ability there? I think it's there better than it is for Kirk Cousins, at least at a baseline level. So with that being said, I think you can get an improvement over Kirk Cousins. And there are things we don't know about how players develop, and we don't know their personality side of things. So that makes me a little bit more willing if Levis has, because the reports from Levis from NFL teams and that sort of thing are pretty glowing about his football acumen and his work ethic and his personality and that sort of thing. And really, they're kind of glowing for everybody but CJ Stroud. Like, even the Anthony Richardson stuff that comes out, it's not as positive, at least in terms of the football acumen side. But, like, there is some positive stuff coming out at the football acumen side. It's just there's more positive stuff coming out for Will Levis. So this is somewhat of a projection of what NFL teams would do. But to take the shot to move up and get the quarterback, I think I'd be willing to do that at that point. Again, I think it's more 50-50 for me than it is, you know, a surefire thing with Will Levis. For the other guys, I'm 100% willing to move up to 10. My preferred thing is if Will Levis does go number 2 overall or something crazy like the betting markets have right now, or the top 3 quarterbacks that do come off the board are Levis, Stroud, and Young, and at the 10 range with the Eagles or the 11 range with the Titans if they want to trade back and don't want to draft a quarterback for some weird reason. I would love moving up here for Richardson, but I'd do it with Levis. And this is maybe my desire to move on from Kirk Cousins more than it is a pro Will Levis argument.
Well, I'm with you there. I'll just add, I absolutely would not trade up for Will Levis. And I'm with Luke. I probably wouldn't draft him at 23 either. Feel like we definitely mined that for plenty of gold. So speaking of old men that you shouldn't draft in the first round, can we just briefly touch on the Hendon Hooker thing?
Here we go.
So I want to get
about this for a second.
I want to get a couple things off my chest about Hendon Hooker. First of all, like, I've listened to a couple former GMs, and you have these leaks from people in the league, right, who are like, Hendon Hooker's like the 3rd best quarterback in the draft. Like, Michael Lombardi, who's a former GM or whatever, is like, Hendon Hooker's the 3rd best quarterback in the draft. And I'm like, what are you, first of all, from an NFL perspective, what are you looking at? Because this Tennessee offense is, from an NFL perspective, a joke, right? Like, it's a super spread out Baylor offense, like the Art Briles Baylor offense adapted to the SEC. You've got a wide receiver in Jalen Hyatt who outruns everybody on a college field. I don't think we'll get into the wide receivers. I don't think he's really going to do that on the NFL field, but like, his winning trait is that he tracks the ball well and he's a good deep threat in the college game, which means he outruns everybody. Basically, Hendon Hooker can throw the ball up to him whenever he wants. Cedric Tillman is another quality NFL wide receiver. Like, there's a strong NFL offensive line in front of him. You know, Darnell Wright's probably going to be a 1st round pick. So he's got all this great surrounding talent that outmatches opponents even in the SEC because of specific things like the speed of the wide receivers, right? And then he's got and he's 25 years old. He's almost 26 years old. He tore his ACL, so he's not going to start for the beginning of the season. He has been in college for 6 years. He had no production, wasn't really a viable NFL draft prospect before you get to this final season as a 25-year-old playing football, against 18 and 19-year-olds. That's the crazy part to me. And then you want the Vikings to spend a first-round pick on him. I think the steam of Hendon Hooker to the Vikings has been entirely from media members looking at the Vikings, looking at them saying, we are heavily in the quarterback market. Or they say, oh, Kirk Cousins' contract is up after this year. They need a QB of the future, right? And then they're like, oh, well, 4 quarterbacks went in the top 10, so the Vikings are going to get a quarterback, and they're going to get the 5th best quarterback that I have on my board, which is Hendon Hooker. And that's where the connection comes in for me, for the Vikings, rather than necessarily the Vikings being in on a guy who I just don't believe in all that much. And Luke, you can talk more about the technical details, because I know you don't really believe in him either.
I don't, and this is what I was hinting at with okay, Hendon Hooker is an inaccurate quarterback. There are deeply concerning accuracy issues. And I do think that the accuracy is on the level of Anthony Richardson. If you don't like that Anthony Richardson is inaccurate and that's his main flaw, that's his main rawness, you can't turn around and be like, but Hendon Hooker, because it's the same problem. And I think I understand a little bit of the hype around him, pushing him up to, I think he's going to be more of a second round guy. He's 51 on the consensus board. On the new consensus board, Arif Hassan just dropped the finalized version of it with everyone's board on it. He's up at 51. He's going as a second rounder in most mocks at grinding the mocks. I think every once in a while you'll see a Daniel Jeremiah or a Matt Miller or somebody who just swears by this guy, kind of say that, I have him as a first rounder, but I kind of feel like the league doesn't. But here's the technical thing about his accuracy. His feet, if you look at, Richardson's feet, now they're all chaotic and they're not very controlled. His feet are very controlled. His mechanics are actually really smooth. I don't mind his release. I don't mind the way, he's a little bit upright when he throws the ball. I think he could maybe widen out his base a little bit sometimes, but I wouldn't necessarily need him to do that. Just to do it, because he has a very comfortable throwing motion and he just sails it 5 yards over. I just think it's a feel thing. And I know I sound like a total boomer. This is 1990s analysis, but I think he just doesn't have a feel for that spacing and he just misses. And it's one thing to miss go balls down the sideline. Those are hard shots. Even the seam ball, 30 yards down the field, up the seam, you should hit it, but there's a degree of difficulty to that. But when there's a tunnel screen and you're one-hopping it, and I start thinking about 2011 Donovan McNabb, I'm going, am I okay with this? We think about a guy's weaknesses, the 2 questions. Am I okay with this? Can I just get over it? No, I can't. This is a problem. And then B, do I think I can fix it? Well, if the problem isn't mechanics, and then what is the problem? And maybe this is a me problem. Maybe I just don't know what the issue is. And somebody smarter than me can say, oh, no, you're just not seeing he's doing this. And we can, get his elbow tucked in the right way or whatever I don't know about. And then that's that with him. But then my question becomes, okay, he started for 5 years. Why hasn't this happened yet? And with all these older quarterbacks, how much development can you project for a guy that has already been playing for 5 years? Why hasn't he learned that yet? Is it a problem with Tennessee's coaching? I'm not sure. The other thing is Tennessee's offense is a Mickey Mouse offense. It's very collegey, and you have to take out when you see a collegey offense like that. It doesn't necessarily mean the guy isn't going to be good in the NFL. Yeah. It just means you have to be really careful about what you're looking at. I see half-field reads. Okay, not only am I concerned that your offense is made out of only half-field reads, feels like something you do for a guy that can't make full field reads, right? So I got to ask about that if I'm Kwesi. I got to call up, Tennessee's coaches and say, hey, why'd you do this? Was this just the offense you thought would be good in the SEC, or is this an issue you're trying to deal with? But also, you see guys on the other half, so it's a pre-snap half-read offense. That means before the snap, you pick a side, and then you go read that side out. People on the other side, receivers on the other side, start dogging it. They know that once Hendon Hooker is looking the other way, he's never coming over. And you don't see him flip the field. You don't see him go, oh shoot, they rotated the coverage. That side isn't there the way I thought pre-snap. Flip his hips and look.
That is a feature of that offense. That's been a conversation for years, going back to Corey Coleman at Baylor, where it looks like guys dogging around.
Is it the same Baylor offense?
It's not the same people, but Heupel is a Bryles disciple.
Okay, he's off the tree.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it is a very similar offense. It's the exact same principles in that offense. So it is that.
Okay. Then I'll adjust that then to, at best, he maybe can see full field reads, but we can't know that because we don't have evidence. Yeah. So maybe he can, right? And he is getting all kinds of raving about leadership and character, and he's killing the interviews and stuff. So maybe he does have that, and teams see it in him. I see a lot of one read and panic from him, which bugs me. And ultimately, I see a pretty big ceiling. He's got the arm. He's got the bombas. Same way Levis and Richardson has, oh man, this dude can just like kind of cannon one down there and hit a giant post route 65 yards down the field. And that's very cool. And it's eye candy. But I struggle with an offense that did a lot of the production for him, a lot of Mickey Mouse dumping it off to Tillman or Hyatt. A lot of little stick routes and stupid little things, and then being inconsistent in that short game greatly concerns me. So for me, Hendon Hooker is a player I would probably see as a backup player in the league, and that's not something you take in round 1 or round 2. You maybe take a backup in round 3, but I also see things in the way of that and question marks about can he be a backup quarterback because I can't know certain things. So that I have a 4th round grade on Hooker. That's where I'm at on him. I know I'm way lower than consensus on him, and I'm okay with that.
I would have had the same grade. I agree with almost everything you just said, Luke. The only thing I disagree with is bagging on 90s analysis. Okay. Listen,
it was a simpler, pure time.
Sometimes things really are very simple. I watched a lot of college football this year. Maybe I had a hunch that quarterbacks were in the mix. I don't know, but I was really into the game this year, and I did catch some Hendon Hooker early in the year, and I remember thinking this guy's really good. I was like, wow, this guy's he's doing some stuff. There was a multiple overtime game that he had early in the year. I can't remember who it was against, but I was like, he just balled out, and I was like, okay, this is really interesting. And then I Googled him, and I found out he was going to be 25, and I immediately ignored him for the rest of the year. And I found out he tore his ACL even later in the season. I was like, okay, good thing I didn't watch any more Hendon Hooker. I can't believe we're even discussing him in the first round. It's insane to me. There's definitely,
like Matt said, there's definitely a lot of, okay, everybody and their mother knows the Vikings are looking for a quarterback. Their actions are pointing that way. Reports are pointing that way. They're not even trying to keep it a secret. They're calling everyone and being like, hey, what would it cost to trade up? That gets out. Right. But I think when you're doing a mock draft and you're Daniel Jeremiah and it's not a mock draft with trades and all the top 4 quarterbacks have gone to somebody else in the mock draft, you get to 23 and you go, man, I know the Vikings are like super dead set on quarterback. Guess I'll just give them the next one. And I think people are mistaking that for actual like reports that the Vikings are high on this guy, which we have not really heard of one way. We've heard from, I think, Darren Wilson that they've done a lot of work on him, that they've done their homework, they've researched him a lot, but that doesn't mean that necessarily that they liked what they found. Yeah.
So let's hopefully put that to bed right here, right now on this podcast. Okay, wow. So that was a lot. We've touched on the quarterbacks. That's always the most exciting thing every draft. You want to talk about the QBs, especially this team, where we're at and everything. Let's just set aside for a second. Let's keep this short because I think I know the answer already. But do either of you have an instinct of, if we didn't have the option for the quarterback, I'd still trade up for X, Y, or Z player at a different position? Is there anybody on your radar that you would be like, oh, I'm okay with trading up for that guy? I have a feeling I know the answer.
Not for me.
Okay.
I just don't have any guys that I feel
not for significant draft capital, no. Like, if you, like, maybe a Devin Witherspoon, if he fell to, like, the mid-teens, and then you can do like a swap of your 3rd round pick for like a 5th round pick or something and get up there, but that seems too cheap to do that just off the cuff from me. Yep. So I don't think I'm making a trade up for anybody.
So QB or bust. Totally agree. Nothing more to discuss there. Let's keep it moving. So, all right, we talked about the dream scenarios. We talked about, oh gosh, wouldn't it be great if we could add a 1-5 to the team or whatever? We talked about all that. Realistically, so many things have to go right for us to even find the deal, for it to pull it off on draft day and not get, the carpet pulled out from under us by a different team. There's a million things to have to go right, and the guy has to be there, and you have to pick the right guy, and. So let's assume for a second that's unlikely, which, it probably is. But it's not fun to say that, but it's probably unlikely. We're sitting at 23. All right. Let's talk about some of the options that you guys have honed in on, that have been out there in the world, that we've been linked to. Guys that we would take at 23 if we were like, okay, we sat here, we're not trading back, we need a guy, we know we have needs all across the roster. Let's start with cornerbacks. All right. Cornerback in the 1st round. Oh boy, here we are again. Matt, why
That's right.
Yeah. Kick us off with just a general overview, and then Luke, maybe you can touch on some more guy that you're really in love with, Let's talk about the corners. I can't believe it, but let's talk about the corners.
Yeah, so I'd take 5 up to 5 guys at 23, and I think there are 2 guys for me that if they fell all the way to 23, I would not actively be looking to trade back for, which I think is another fun component of this conversation, right? Because my expectation is that the Vikings will try to trade back from 23 if they don't trade up for a quarterback. Like, I think it's very low likelihood that they will make the pick at 23, but Christian Gonzalez and Devin Witherspoon, for me, I would stay and pick at 23. I'm kind of stealing off of Luke here, so I like Devin Witherspoon better than I like Christian Gonzalez. I think I would be very tempted, unless I got a good offer, to stick at 23 for Joey Porter Jr. And then I'd also take either Cam Smith or the Maryland corner, Deontay Banks, at 23. If I couldn't find a trade back partner at that point, I might be tempted to take Deontay Banks at 23 straight up. I love his attitude, his aggressiveness, his physicality, and his athleticism obviously is like ridiculously off the charts. So those 5 guys are my 23rd pick, or are like who I would be willing to stay at 23 and pick. Emmanuel Forbes is kind of a fringe guy for me, but he's just too light. Like, I can't take that guy who's 166 pounds in the 1st round. I don't care what his college production is, or what his athletic testing is, or what his projection, or even what his tape looks like. Like, he's 166 pounds is really difficult for me.
Luke, take it away. Who's your corner at 23?
Yeah, I mean, the dream is Devin Witherspoon. He's my favorite corner in the class. I think if you're a team that uses a lot of press bail, like if you run a lot of match 3, the Eagles, Seahawks are 2 teams for that. I think Christian Gonzalez would be better for you. Now I'm stealing off of Matt, though, from the Brian Flores episode. Not as much of that in the Flores scheme. There could be, but the Vikings would probably ask him to play a little bit more like pure man stuff, which he can do. He's still a 1st round corner at that. You're just kind of not using his superpower, and why would you not? Why'd you trade up for a guy that you're not even going to use the reason he's going that high? So I like Joey Porter Jr. a lot, and then Cam Smith and Deontay Banks. Those are the 5 that I would take at 23. Yeah. But yeah, like Matt kind of hinted to, there's so much depth in this class that if you are sitting there and Cam Smith is on the board, but then you go, I don't know, I kind of like DJ Turner. Maybe I like Keely Ringo, maybe as a day 2 guy, Clark Phillips. Well, let's get some extra value. Get one of these other guys. What's the difference between DJ Turner and Cam Smith? I have Cam Smith above DJ Turner, for sure. I think most people do. But by what margin? And is that margin worth trading back 20 spots, getting maybe a 2nd round pick, maybe getting picks next year to help you deal with the QB crisis you're going to have next year because you struck out on somebody if you haven't traded up? You're sitting there at 23. That means you didn't do the quarterback thing. And so then you get into the cost benefit of that. But there really is a kind of pick your flavor to this cornerback class. If you want a little bit more of a passive finesse, Christian Gonzalez, you have that. If you want somebody that's just a bully, you can get Joey Porter. Devin Witherspoon's very heady, also a little bit of a bully. Deonte Banks is your like super athlete. There's all kinds of whatever you're looking for, you can get. And that means that there's probably a lot of options. If there's 4 corners on the board that I'm happy to start on my team, I'm going to trade back until 3 of them are gone.
Well said, boys. I don't have a lot to add. Let's keep it moving. I think you're both right, though. I think that the likelihood we draft at 23, if all those other scenarios fall out, it feels like a trade back year. It does, but maybe we
Trader's going to trade.
Trader's going to trade. There's been some discussion in the ether for some reason about the Minnesota Vikings taking a wide receiver in the first round. This is very baffling to me. I don't really understand it. Can you guys unpack that for me a little bit? Is there a receiver that you would take at 23? Does it make sense for this team right now? You want to talk about, XYZ doesn't make sense for this team right now. Receiver does not seem like a huge need. Unpack that for me a little bit, guys. Luke, can you start there? Just is there any...
I think this is where Matt and I might have some disagreements on evals, which could be fun. I think receiver is a need for future for sure. As it stands right now, and one way to address this would be to extend players, but as it stands right now, they just don't have receivers under contract next year. That's going to be a thing. Now, extend Justin Jefferson, extend KJ Osborne. Now you got 2, but that's a move you could potentially make, and that's only 2 guys.
Breaking news: we earlier today picked up Justin Jefferson's 5th-year option, so we do have at least 1 receiver under contract for next year.
We do. We got Justin Jefferson, Jalen Naylor. And I think that's literally it. I think literally everyone else is... correct me if I'm wrong. There might be a rookie contract I'm forgetting about. Yeah. So it is certainly a need. Is it a first-round need? It kind of depends on the class, and I'm not very high on this class. I wasn't very high on the class last year, though. I had a couple whiffs there. The 3 guys that I like... I don't know if you feel the same, Matt, are Jackson Smith and Jigba at Ohio State, Jordan Addison and Zay Flowers. I know that all of those guys have some physical limitation that really make people hesitant, but they're all good at playing wide receiver.
Yeah.
And it's kind of just that simple. I'm pretty low on Quentin Johnston. That's kind of the next guy on my list, and then we get into some of the weirder takes. But I don't know if you feel the same, Matt.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit different from you in that I'm not big on... The only wide receiver I like in this draft class is JSN. And I think that Jackson Smith and Jigba is kind of a little bit underrated, honestly, from what his skill set is. I mean, the dude... just gets open, right? Everybody says about him that he just gets open. He's kind of cast as a slot only, and I'm somewhat interested to see what your opinion of him, Luke. Are there reps of him on tape getting off press or facing press at all from his Ohio State from what you've seen, or dealing with that kind of physicality that you have to deal with from corners in the NFL?
I haven't seen it one way or another, but that might be a me problem. I know I'm pretty happy with the way he releases and the way that he deals with the physicality of the goal line, red zone, low red reps. The way he can control his body. And I think the way that he runs his routes too and releases off of the line is heady enough where if somebody's goal is to just be a press bully, I think you see enough savvy where it's all right, he's got to have a tool in his bag for that. I will admit, though, I see him a little bit as pie in the sky, so I have not looked too deep. I think he's out by the top 15, and I don't think he's I don't think the Vikings trade up for that kind of thing.
That's fair, and I think he's probably a little bit pie in the sky as well, but I would absolutely take him at 23. I think, it's not the same as Justin Jefferson because, I think Justin Jefferson was a better athlete than Jackson Smith and Jigba is. That's pretty clear. Smith and Jigba ran a 4.49 at the extremely juiced Ohio State Pro Day. Their 40 times are juiced by probably half, 5/100ths of a second. So that's probably at best somewhere in the 4.55 range, or up to the 4.6 range, just based on how the Ohio State Pro Day historically works for wide receivers and those kind of 40
Sure.
times. But I think that's fast enough. Like, you look at a lot of the best receivers in the NFL, and they're not guys who ran in the 4.3s. There's a lot of like Devontae Adams, who is obviously a little bit of a bigger, more physical receiver. But the higher level guys don't necessarily need to be burners. They need to be great technicians, right? And that's what Smith and Jigba is. I think, if he has the ability to play through that physicality, which isn't something I've seen, but it's not something I've seen evidence to either way, kind of like Luke was saying. So if he has that ability to play through physicality, I don't think he's necessarily cast as a slot only in the NFL. And his route running, quickness, that sort of thing is incredible. So that's why I think he's a first round pick. Every other guy in this draft, I hate. I don't like Quentin Johnston at all. I think if you're a wide receiver who's 6'3", first of all, he's supposed to be a giant wide receiver, right? He's 6'3", 208. That's not massive for an NFL wide receiver. Like, that's big, but especially the 208 part isn't massive. Like, get into the 220s and then talk to me about that, right? But with him, he's supposed to be the suit.
I have to tamp down on Quentin Johnston for a second.
Yeah.
Luke, I had the joy of hosting Matt for dinner a couple weeks, or last week. He was in town, and his rant on Quentin Johnson, spent, I don't know, it might have been a 10-minute conversation just about Quentin Johnson. He really doesn't like Quentin Johnson.
He's supposed to be this great athlete, right? Then he doesn't test he jumps, but he doesn't run and doesn't do agility drills at the combine. And he runs a 4.5 at his pro day, and he has bad agility drills. And it's like, okay, if I'm supposed to be getting this raw, huge, super athlete wide receiver that I can mold into somebody good, he's raw, but he's not huge, and he's not a super athlete. So the tape is exciting with what he can do after the catch, but I don't know how much that gives me overall. So that's why I'm out on him. I'm also out on the small guys, just straight up. I think with Jordan Addison in particular, you look at guys with that body type who have made it in the NFL, and I found two guys digging through. One was, I should say, if you exclude guys who run really fast, right, who are great deep threats, which Jordan Addison, at least timed, does not run fast, right? He's a 4.49 guy. The guys that size who have succeeded are like Deshaun Jackson and Tyreek Hill, who run in the 4.3s, right? Who are low 4.3 kind of players. The one guy I found was Deontay Johnson, who's a comp for him. So, maybe you get Deontay Johnson level play. There's also Richie James, who kind of came on last year, who's kind of in that similar size range, who played pretty well. But for Jordan Addison, I just don't really see the athletic comparisons for a guy with his play style, right? Devontae Smith is an entirely different animal to me because of his play strength and his contested catch ability. For Jordan Addison, and again, this isn't necessary. I haven't watched a ton of tape on any of these guys, so I am kind of talking just based off of the athletic profiles. But I just find it difficult, and I know he has bonkers production in college, right? Obviously he was an incredible college wide receiver. It's just hard for me to take that guy at 23 overall.
I think that's the point, though, Matt. Is we're talking about such a crucial juncture for this team this year. It's such a weird year. We have so many needs. We have so few ways to solve those needs. It feels like a massive luxury pick with a ton of risk to take pretty much any of these guys at 23.
Maybe, yeah, with other things that are potentially more pressing, but that's the way the draft goes. It's not a luxury to take the best player on the board. It'd be a luxury to not take the best player on the board because of the way your positions are set up.
That's right.
Here's what the only thing I'll push back on there, because I think that's all super fair. With Addison and Flowers in particular, again, I look at the weaknesses in a second. The weakness is that he's small. How does he solve that problem? And I think the way that he runs his routes, where he's willing to go so far off of his alignment, and then he's so good at and disciplined at restacking that alignment. He'll go way off the reservation, take the corner away, and put that corner off of his spot so he can't get pressed as hard, especially versus off coverage. He can't get covered physically when he does that. He takes that away, but then there's also the discipline to get back on that alignment and still set up your quarterback and you're not making your quarterback adjust. Zay Flowers does the first half of that, but not the second half, and that's why I have him below Addison. And I think it's much more of like, if that is just true deal breaker for you, totally fair. The reason I still have him as a guy I'd take at 23 is just the after catch electricity just makes him a piece in the offense that I think can cover up a whole bunch of other stuff if it comes to that. So I could see that plan like working out. But yeah, you talk about like small guys and whether or not they make it on the whole. For me, the common thread has to be, well, does he have a way to? Does he have a method to overcome that? And I think Addison does. All of the other small guys don't. and The only other guy that I would put up with at 23 is Zay Flowers, because he just has another superpower that talks me into it. But all those other small guys don't, and that's why they're none of them are going to be first round picks.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to see how Addison plays out, because I'm just not as sold on the route running for a guy that's his size being the dominant trait, that wins every single thing. And I value route running very highly, so maybe I am kind of contradicting myself a little bit here, but like, if he's not able to also win through physicality, like, I just feel like the timing is going to get thrown off at the NFL level if he has to go that far around guys to be able to make it time after time. Now, obviously, it worked very well at USC, right?
Yeah, that's the superpower is being able to go around guys without throwing the timing off, and that's like very unique to him and just him.
So I don't know if that's a factor of he's playing against Pac-12 corners, right? Like, and NFL corners are going to be able to keep up with him better, stay in his hip pocket, not allow him to make those types of moves. I don't know. Maybe he will make a hit, but it's just not something I can invest in at 23. Now, if you trade back into the second round and you pick up a second round pick and a third round pick to be able to trade back into the second round, maybe if he's still there on the board and you feel good about the corners there in your last year third round pick, sure. So I think that's kind of where I'm at it with it.
Ooh, it's palpable tension on the pod tonight. We finally disagree on something.
Yeah.
No, well said, guys. Is there anything you want to add about the receivers before we talk about what is a far more likely pick at 23?
No, I don't think so. And I would
take them all or leave them all.
Just for you, Greg, like, I know you don't like the idea of taking a receiver. Cornerback and receiver are the two things I've seen the most outside of quarterback. So, I think that there's a pretty decent chance on draft night we're going to see a receiver, like, all things considered.
I just think that's nonsense. I can't understand it, but who knows? You never know how it's going to go. Not that you're speaking nonsense, Matt. I hear you. I find the link very strange. Just because, with JJ on the squad, I believe you can pretty much cobble whatever you want behind him, and it's going to work okay. This just doesn't feel like the year to me. Maybe next year I'll be all about it. Okay, so we have needs across the defense, but the thing I think we've all seen us linked to most often, whether it's mock drafts or people we like to follow on Twitter or whatever, you see IDL come up a lot. Defensive tackle, interior defenders comes up a lot. I've seen us linked to big guys, small guys, fast guys, all these different types of guys. A couple of names pop up a lot, but Matt, I know you've put some work into this. Can you just unpack for us guys that you like at 23 that may be available on the interior of the defensive line?
Yeah, so I guess I would say, if I'm the GM, right, the only position I'm really looking at 23 overall prior to trading back is cornerback, and Jackson Smith and Jigba, wide receiver. I mean, obviously, if some of the ridiculous top guys fall, but I'd take them, but that's not really, something we're expecting, right? For the interior defensive line, I think I'm cool with picking a guy like Brian Brzee there. I'd be okay with the Vikings choosing Kalijah Kancey, because with Kalijah Kancey specifically, like, he's got absolute T-Rex arms. He's got like the shortest arms he's got shorter arms than any defensive lineman that's been successful in the NFL. And with that in mind, it's hard for me to see that. But Brian Flores uses his defensive linemen in a variety of ways, right? So it does make a difference there. Beyond that, you've got Mozzie Smith, who I actually like a lot, who's more of a nose tackle, but he's super athletic. I'd be okay with taking him in the first round, kind of over a couple other guys on, I might be okay with taking him over Brian Brzee. Like, I think he's a really explosive player who could be a game changer just based off of that athletic profile. But overall, there are, those guys, and then obviously Jalen Carter, but he's not somebody who's going to fall. So maybe it's like 4 guys who I'm okay with the Vikings taking. But outside of that, like, if you look at the Vikings' positions of need, right, in the draft, it's like, okay, maybe we potentially need another linebacker. Maybe we, I don't know exactly what we need to do in the draft beyond corner, wide receiver, interior offensive line. Those aren't positions you want to be taking in the first round, and they're definitely not positions, and they're not positions that you want to be taking in the first round of this draft either. So I think from that perspective, you're really not going to have a bunch of guys outside of the guys we've already talked about who are targets for the Vikings, and they're probably going to be looking to trade down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's all dead on, Matt. And I would bounce it to Luke. He's having a little bit of a technical issue at the moment, but we're going to keep continuing
so
here.
Hopefully we get him back.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get him back here shortly. Okay, so I think we touched on quite a bit here. We've talked about a variety of positions. We've talked about a variety of needs. And I think I already know your answer to this because you kind of just said it. But let's just tamp down on it for a second. What position do you think? Let's take quarterback out of it because it's just too many question marks. There's too many things that have to go right or wrong, or we don't really know what's going to happen there. We almost certainly have to trade to make it happen. So let's just take quarterback out of it. What is the position? You're sitting at 23. You're not trading back. What's the position you're going with regardless of player?
I think if I look at the Vikings roster as is currently constructed, and I ask myself, what players am I okay with starting, right? You start to see a couple questions creep in. I think wide receiver 3 is a question, right? And while we did sign Josh Oliver, we do have CJ Ham on a renegotiated contract as well. That was an extension. So we're clearly intending to play more 12 personnel. We're probably intending to play more 21 personnel as well. Wide receiver 3 still is a question mark. Like, Jalen Nailor is penciled in as the guy right now. And we did get Luke back, guys. So welcome back, Luke. We're talking about positional needs right now. Wide receiver 3 is a position we need, and I'm not comfortable with the guys we've got there, right? Jalen Nailor, I like what I saw from him, but I don't think he's a guy, I want seeing 50+% of the snaps immediately without at least giving him some competition. And he doesn't have it right now.
Okay.
Because I don't see Jalen Reagor as that guy either.
So you're going wide.
No. So interior defense. Let me keep going. Interior defensive line. I'm comfortable with all of those guys kind of starting. Actually, I'm comfortable with the rotation of Khyiris Tonga, Harrison Phillips, Jonathan Bullard, Dean Lowry, like those guys all getting on the field. I don't think we need to add a starter there in the draft necessarily as this goes on. At cornerback, there's only one guy I'm comfortable with starting, and that's Byron Murphy. And you need 3 guys to start. I like Andrew Booth Jr. I like a Caleb Evans. But if I'm the Vikings and I'm looking at this, I'm only counting on one of those 2 guys to be a quality starter. So I want to add more competition to that room. And that's why I think corner is the number 1 position I would prioritize. I don't know how you feel about, like, your biggest priority. We kind of threw quarterback to the side.
Yeah,
Luke, what's your biggest priority?
So throwing that to the side, because that's totally a, like, drop everything, just get your guy deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. It's definitely corner. Absolutely. I mean, they currently have 6 corners under contract right now. They don't even have enough for camp. Now, that's, you could fill that out with 5 undrafted guys and say, we'll just go in and have it be a bad group. They feel great about Booth and Evans. They've said it a lot, and I think it's real. I don't think that it's just bluster. But even with that, unless you're really like, oh, these guys are just like good and they're ready and the people just don't know about it yet, which is pretty optimistic. Yeah. you need some more guys. You need more guys just to be depth. Even if you do pencil those guys in as starters, you've got guys who were on your practice squad last year signing futures contracts as your backups, and you need special teamers there as well and stuff. So yeah, you definitely need cornerbacks as a more dire thing than anything else. Now, that can mean it can be 2 day 2 picks, or it can be a day 2 and a day 3 pick, and that's how you address it. Mm-hmm. That is an option. It's a way forward. I could definitely use another guy on interior defensive line, just with the guys we have right now. I also think with cornerback, one of the solutions to that problem can be to use safeties more, to have more Josh Metellus, more Lewis Seen in there, with Bynum and Harrison Smith doing cornerback things, and the line between corner and safety gets a little blurred in that defense. So you can kind of... there's definitely a place for him. I mean, from Alabama to Brian Flores, it certainly fits.
Yeah.
Be a little bit off the reservation, but it could be a kind of a backdoor way to select a corner if all your faves are gone. Which actually happened. I just did a media mock draft thing for some radio show where they sent me the board, and that was it. Like, all 5 of the guys that I like were gone, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll just take Brian Branch and try to backdoor it. But I think I'll even say offensive weapon, not just wide receiver, but weapon. Somebody who is electric in space, especially considering that it doesn't look like they're going to have Dalvin Cook this year. Whether they trade him or cut him, I think just depends on circumstance. But I think they need a guy that can do stuff in space, that can force cornerbacks when they're in cover 2 to really respect that flat and really try to get, close down that space. Somebody that just can be a dynamic player. I don't care if that's you go grab a running back that's really exciting and have it work that way. I don't care if that's maybe that's you just are hoping that that's TJ Hawkinson or something. Maybe that is a wide receiver that's electric after the catch or something like that. But I just need somebody that puts some kind of stress on a defense. Can he win one-on-one on routes? Can he be stressful after the catch, stressful in space? Something to stress a defense, to give them another problem to solve outside of Justin Jefferson, I think is a huge need. How they go about solving that problem, I don't care what 2 letters are next to his name, but I think that's probably the next biggest need for me after corner. And then, I could use a little extra competition on the D-line. I think a young developing edge is a low-key need. I think that could be like a middle of the draft kind of thing. Because, they've got Daniil Hunter, only 1 year left on his deal. Zadarius Smith might get cut. Marcus Davenport's only a 1-year deal. That's a little bit more of a short-term position than I'm comfortable with. And that could, again, be resolved by extending some of those guys. Why not? Or you could grab give me a DJ Wonnum that we can sort of make a Devi guy. That would also be something I'd look for.
So, Luke, you're kind of guiding us effortlessly in this direction already. Let's talk a little bit about day 2. All right, so we're assuming corner probably at 23. If we sit there, maybe we trade back, we pile up picks. Day 2, second, third round, guys that are maybe they have the talent, but they're missing this, they're missing that, whatever. We have a bucket of positions here that we've already touched on. I'll just throw in linebacker, interior lineman. I think this should be just a hodgepodge. Tell me about some guys that both of you like, and feel free to just ping pong it back and forth here. Guys that fit some of these positions of need that almost certainly aren't first round draft picks that you think would be great day 2 guys. And I just want to hear your role. Who's on your list? Your little secret crush.
So
on day 2.
Secret crush.
So
I think we might have the same one as a receiver.
Yeah, as a receiver, we definitely have the same one. For corner, Luke, I know you like Clark Phillips. I've got a couple of questions based on him. A, how did you feel about the Auburn corner? I'm blanking on his name. Last year. Crap. Sorry. It's McCreary. Roger McCreary. How did you feel about him?
I just barely didn't get to him, and I felt really bad about it, but I didn't really have a take.
Because athletically, Roger McCreary is like the same testing as Clark Phillips.
How did he do this year?
He was his PFF grading wasn't great. I mean, I didn't watch him. And he went to Tennessee, but he started the entire season for Tennessee this year. So clearly they liked him enough to play him the whole year. And then secondly, have you watched Trey Hodges-Tomlinson, the other undersized corner who shut everybody he played down?
I have not.
Because the one thing I like about Hodges-Tomlinson is, granted, he's like over a full inch shorter. He's like in the 5'7" range in terms of height. So he is tiny. Where Clark Phillips is small, he's like 5'9". He's 5'9".
Or no, 5'9". I'm thinking
and
of
180
downs.
something. And he's got 29-inch arms, which is also small for a corner. And that's something I was harping on with corners last year. Like, I didn't love guys who had that short arms, but the one thing that did stick out to me is what the Patriots did this past season, where basically their cornerback room outside of Jalen Mills was all small guys. Nobody was bigger than 5'10" outside of Jalen Mills. Jonathan Jones, 5'10" slot corner. Jack Jones, who they drafted in like the 5th round, is also a similar athletic profile to what Clark Phillips is. And he played really, really well for a rookie. So for the Flores defense, I don't think you need these massive, 6-foot long guys. I think if you get quick guys who are quick and have that ability to blanket guys, kind of like a Byron Murphy, right? That's why I'm excited about the Byron Murphy signing in the Flores defense, is he's not the biggest either. He's not the fastest, but he will absolutely blanket wide receivers. I think those guys kind of are a fit. So I like the idea of Clark Phillips. I like the idea of Trey Hodges-Tomlinson, but I think there's also a ton of corners in that range. Like Julius Brents, who's a super athlete. I like the idea of 2 on day 2. So there's a bunch of corners. And I'll let you go after some of the receivers, Luke.
Yeah, I like Clark Phillips. He has all the steps, and that's important. He's got a very wide repertoire of tools. He can shuffle step depending on what your release is. The back pedal's good. The turn and run is good, and that helps him overcome not being as big as some of these guys, and that will continue to help him in the NFL. That's the kind of stuff that NFL receivers are going to throw the book at you. You better have a lot of different tools to overcome it, and you better not have a tool that you really, really suck at that receivers can force you into. But yeah, for the receivers, we were hinting before, Jonathan Mingo is our guy a little bit from Ole Miss.
Hashtag our guy.
Hashtag our guy. And for me, he's faster than he looked. I think there was a lot of 80% routes, 80% speed at Ole Miss. Part of that might be the range and how long it took his quarterback to read things. So when you're doing a deep over, you don't want to clear that space as fast as possible. You want to, once you're in the hole in the zone, you're usually, or like middle search or anything like that, once you're in the hole in the zone, you want to kind of let that up and maximize that space, really kind of drift through that zone nice and slow. And Mingo had to do a lot of that because the quarterback took forever to find him. So he just had to really slow play a lot of stuff. And even with go routes, he had to slow play stuff because he'd run out of the dude's range. But then, you give him a tunnel screen and see, all right, now the burners are on and I'm running as fast as I possibly can. You go, oh my God, this dude looks like somebody that maybe would run pretty good 40. And he did run a pretty good 40 at the combine. So I think he's faster than he's getting credit for. He blocks like a tight end. In the run game, it's like having another tight end. I made a joke. He's, what if you want to run 12 personnel, but you don't want to admit it? That's Mingo. But I don't see the limitations in the pass game you usually see when you have an extra tight end. It just feels like the best of both worlds. I got a 2nd-round grade on him. I'd be happy with him. Would trade back and pick him in the 40s or something. I would take it. I'm no apologies.
Honestly, I checked out the consensus board when I was watching him, and he was like 120th. I think he's risen in the update that went out today. But like that's like a 4th-round grade on consensus on him, and I think it's kind of crazy because, like you said, you see the speed on tape in isolated reps, right? Like there are some very good reps of him beating corners off the line of scrimmage, stacking them on a vertical route, and creating that vertical separation. So I think that's something that he very much has the possibility to do, and I think what it allows him to have is a trait that gets him on the field, right? Like, well, and the blocking helps him get on the field, right? As his rookie year, and the speed and the decent after the catch, and he's a work in progress as a route runner, but he shows some things that you like all of those things will help him contribute enough to get on the field as a rookie, and you can develop him with his great athletic profile over time.
And he does the basics. That'll do.
And I say great athletic profile because he's a better athlete than AJ Brown tested as. like, just in terms of the explosion, and like he did the agility stuff at his pro day, and it's a little bit above average for a guy who's 6'1", 220, having that level of agility. And you can see it on tape. Like, he's not a bad after the catch guy. He's more of a, I get up field and I kind of try to run through guys. But that's what you want for a guy at that size. That's how guys bully guys in the NFL. And he's definitely going to be capable of doing it at the next level. So I agree. I like him a lot.
It's how you catch a 5-yard stick pattern on 3rd and 7, turn it upfield and convert it.
Yeah,
that is exactly that skill set. It's a very Adam Thielen way to do that too. Other guys on my everything I had crashed, so I don't have my board up anymore. But I think I'm not going to be
top 10 prospects off the top of your head.
For real, off of memory. I like Marvin Mims a little bit. I'm not as much as, putting him in the second round or anything, but I think he's like a later day 2 guy. I think he can be a good value. I think he's getting it's a similar thing where Oklahoma's offense held him back a little bit. But I liked what I saw. I liked that he did the basics. I liked the way that he chewed up space, came back to the ball. I think there's a discipline to it. There's just some obscuring going on with being at Oklahoma that just made that offense just kind of makes it a little bit harder to evaluate him. And there's a bunch of unknowns of, well, can he do this? And why wasn't he asked to? Was it just their offense? Or, even if he can't, even if it was just the offense, I don't know if he could do it if asked because I can't see it. So I got to know. But by, pick 87, you're a little more willing to put up with that. So I like him. A lot of people want to talk about Tank Dell. I am not a huge fan. Just he tested really poorly. He's too small. He didn't test well enough for a guy that small. If you're going to go for that, go for like Josh Downs, who I think is a lot rawer than he's getting credit for. But in the same way, he's getting like a lot of it's like when there's one very obvious thing you can say about a guy, it's kind of all that will ever get said about him. Because if I'm talking about Josh Downs and I don't want to, and I don't have many original thoughts, I can just talk about how he's small and kind of there. I did it. And so I think he's a lot rawer than he's getting credit for. There's some stuff he doesn't do in terms of he doesn't really get up into a guy's face very well. And that might be because he's small. He's afraid to get impressed or whatever. But he can kind of telegraph his routes sometimes. And a lot of his big highlights are like whip routes. And it's like everybody wins on a whip route. There's your other your big like day 2 guy. He might even sneak into the first round, but I'm not as big on him.
So, flipping over to interior defensive line, like the guys I mentioned for the first round conversation are kind of like also trade back second round conversation for me. So like Brian Brzee, who's probably going to be a first round pick, Mozzie Smith, who's almost definitely going to be a first round pick based on the athleticism. I was saying earlier, Luke, I like him. And then Kalijah Kancey, I guess I'd accept it if the Vikings did it, but I have concerns, right? Just based off of the arm length profile.
Would you take Mozzie Smith over Kancey?
I think so. Yeah, I was talking about that a bit earlier. I think I would, just because of the athletic upside and the size. Like he's a true nose tackle.
He's over 300, right?
Yeah, he's like 320. He's over 320. So he is a guy we could play as a 1 technique, 0 technique, and that's something that the Flores defense could easily carve a rollout for. And then you put Harrison Phillips at the 5 technique at like 310 or whatever, 4I.
Right, because when you're looping, when you're doing a stunt, you're doing all of the like a 3-man stunt, and you need the nose to loop all the way around to the edge. Well, that's a guy who can do that. Yeah, that rocks.
Yeah, no, so he kind of excites me, but I think he's going in the first round. In terms of other defensive tackles, Tomi Adebawore, the Northwestern guy, I like his athletic profile. I don't know, he's probably an edge in the Flores defense if we're being honest with ourselves. Are there any day 2 edges where it's like, okay, we trade back, we now have 3 day 2 picks for you, Luke?
I gotta say, I'm just going to observe from the sideline here. I've seen a distinct lack of edge discussion, and I think with the issue going on with Zadarius Smith right now, may or may not play for us, might be more of a factor. So please do dive in here. What are we talking about?
Certainly, that's a me problem. I have not researched the edges really at all because I was trying to really focus myself and really be deliberate about and intentional about like what I spent my time on. And I kind of decided, all right, I'll just miss this edge class and I'll just kind of not have opinions, and I'll figure out whoever they draft. But yeah, I'm as eager to know about the edges as you are, Greg. Yeah. Tell me about opinions, Matt. I'll take them from you.
I don't have a ton. Like, I love super athlete edges. I've always loved them. And there are guys who are super athlete edges. The problem is, for a lot of guys, we don't have like the 3-cone drills, which I put a lot of stake into, like, just from evaluating edges. So it's a lot of really explosive linear guys who then didn't do a 3-cone. Yaya Diaby, I think, did do a 3-cone, and he was a crazy good athlete from Louisville. Dane has him as a 3rd-round player. Tui Tuipulotu did not test all that well, but I think he might be a good fit for a Vikings defense as a guy who can reduce down inside and be a power rusher. Well, I guess he didn't do the 40. He also was somebody people expected to be like 280 something at the combine, and he came in at 260. But he's like the 2nd youngest player in this draft as well. So he's really young, and he's got that kind of potential. That's kind of what I'm looking for in an edge prospect. Other than that, I don't have a ton of guys. It's kind of, I'm in a similar boat to Luke, where I want to see what the Vikings might do at the position, because I don't think they're going to prioritize it highly. Like, I don't think, and maybe this is a conversation we can have, I think Dalvin Cook almost certainly gets traded during the draft. I don't think Zadarius Smith gets traded during the draft, and I don't think the Vikings are looking to trade or move on from Zadarius Smith this year. I don't know how you feel about that, Luke.
My understanding of the situation is that they want to keep him, but the draft is just taking everyone's attention right now. And once the draft is over, then they'll turn to figuring out extensions on guys like him, Danielle Hunter, and then eventually, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, and kind of moving on to extending some of the guys that they don't want to leave the building.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then another position, off-ball linebacker. Like, I don't think the Vikings need to take one in the first couple days. If they would take one, like, Jack Campbell is kind of my guy, just because he's.
I was going to ask you about him.
And a super athlete. And I think that would go well with the Flores defense. Like, I want a big guy at linebacker for this Flores defense who's kind of a thumper, because I think Asamoah is going to be our rangy guy. Right now, granted, I don't think Asamoah is like some sort of elite pass coverage guy. And if you look at the Dolphins defense, right, like, their linebackers sucked, frankly, right? It was Landon Roberts and Duke Riley who had basically no investment. So I don't think we're going to prioritize linebacker all that high. But Jack Campbell, if he's there in the 2nd round, I'd be okay with. He's not somebody I'm taking in the 1st round. I just don't value the position that highly.
And to be clear, the only way we're taking anybody on the 2nd round is if we move backwards.
If we trade back.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Anything else you guys want to add on day 2?
No, I don't think so. I think we can go into day 3, guys.
Okay. So, day 3, almost impossible, really, to tell who's going to be available. You know, those first 3 rounds almost never shake out the way that we think they will. There's always guys who go too high, guys who are still sitting there, whatever, like, what's going on? But just generally speaking, who are some guys at those same groups of need, positions of need, or maybe even not positions of need, like...
Yeah, by day 3, it's everything's in need.
Yeah.
Right, everything's in need, right? So you might have I don't know, I really like Sean Tucker out of Syracuse at running back, maybe, like someone kind of interesting like that. Are there some guys, regardless of position, regardless of need, that you're kind of like keyed in on for day 3 potential day 3 picks?
I got a couple quarterbacks.
Go for them. Go for them.
Assuming round 1 doesn't go the way you want, you trade back, you take a corner and a wide receiver, but you still want to take a shot at someone. I think the name a lot of people have heard in connection with the Vikings is Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Yes.
Who the best comp, my favorite comp I heard for him was Tyler Huntley. He's definitely got a limited arm, and don't let his really electrifying running distract you from that. But he's a smart quarterback. He's old, and he's another old prospect. He's a 5-year starter like Hendon Hooker. I think he's a year younger than Hooker, but has the same amount of experience. So you kind of have to apply the same. Is he going to develop a better arm stuff? And I just don't think he's got that particular ceiling on him. But he has such a high floor because he's such a cool runner. Like, he's a really, really fun runner. Yeah, and that scrambles and designed runs, and the improv gene is there. Sometimes he plays it way too fast and loose. So you have to help him with that. But I see him as the like highest upside backup, you know, and that's why I like the Tyler Huntley thing. And the other guy I like is Jaron Hall out of BYU, who I am going to be honest, I don't know why he feels like he's going to be available at day 3, and I kind of don't understand why. He had some mind-numbing panic interceptions. Maybe that's what it is. And he's another older guy.
Yeah.
He lost a year doing a mission because he went to BYU, so he did the Mormon thing. So he's only a 4-year starter at a little bit more of a normal package there, but he's accurate. He's decisive. He reads the full field. That BYU offense is very difficult to operate for a college guy. It's the McVay offense. You can see all the keepers and dagger and all of the things that we saw the Vikings do all the time. Like, it is that offense. So it's pro style experience, and he is running it, operating it, doing stuff at the line of scrimmage, dealing with motions, all of those complexities. Difficult mechanically with a lot of play action, dovetail, drop back, very hard to torque it, get your shoulders flipped, eyes downfield, make a difficult throw from the opposite hash, all that stuff. I really like Jaron Hall. I actually think he has an outside shot to be an NFL starter. Those are kind of two guys that I really, really like in day 3 that I actually have ranked above Hendon Hooker just because of their skill sets being, you know, and like I said before, I have Hendon Hooker, kind of see him as a backup. So we're in that range. But man, if you could walk away with one of those guys, it would make me feel a lot better about missing out on quarterback.
Totally. Yeah. Matt, who's your day 3 crushes?
So I've got a couple. I did have Dorian Thompson-Robinson down as well. One other thing with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, we talked about quarterback age. Like, Dorian Thompson-Robinson is younger than Will Levis. I mean, so he's going to be, you know, late 23 coming in, but I thought
he was 24. Yeah.
Like,
all right, cool.
Yeah. Like Luke said, at least this is per Dane Brugler's draft guide, The Beast. If you subscribe to The Athletic, you get it for free. It's the most comprehensive draft guide that is out there in the space. So check it out, I guess, because I'm stealing his data. But no, so I like him as, like Luke said, that kind of explosive, you know, you can get something very exciting as a backup. And I don't care as much about age on day 3 because this isn't a guy I'm projecting to be a long-term starter for a quarterback. And if he does turn into that, that's a positive. Jaron Hall, obviously, you know, is that late 25, basically the same age as Hendon Hooker. But again, we're talking about a 5th round pick as opposed to literally a 1st round pick. So the expectations are just vastly different. For running backs, I think it's kind of, you can pick your flavor of RB that you want, right? And I tend to
great year to need
I tend to gravitate towards players who are more kind of in the Alex Madison mold at the running back position, just because of what I like out of the position in terms of their ability to read things, which, you know, Madison hasn't always been great at, but he was good at BYU at it. Like, that's why I liked him coming out of BYU. I thought he was a high level runner, and I think he's probably gotten better. And Luke, you've chronicled this pretty well on your podcast.
Boise State.
Or Boise State, right? Yes, Boise State.
Yeah.
But, you know, you've chronicled it pretty well on your podcast. How he's gotten better throughout, like, especially last year as a runner. So yeah,
he's embraced his own identity, I think, a little bit more.
So, like, I like guys in that mold, but I don't want the Vikings to add a guy in that mold because they already kind of have that guy in Alex Madison. So it's basically pick your flavor of running back. I think there's a bunch of guys in day 3 of the draft that are pretty nice. And then at wide receiver, the 2 Stanford guys I actually like quite a bit. And if you notice, like, my 10 to wide receivers here is I don't like the early small guys, but like the mid-round guys who maybe aren't super burners, who are technically sound, are also kind of a thing for me, a wide receiver. And I think both Michael Wilson and Elijah Higgins kind of fit that mold a little bit, where they both ran in the 4.5s. Not something you love to see, but they're also, you know, over 6 foot, over 200 pounds, which is rare for the early wide receivers. I agree with Luke on the Marvin Mims love on day 2. But in terms of day 3, it's just a bunch of big, fast guys, really, for the most part. I feel like you got the Princeton guy, Andre Yoshevitz. You've got Bryce Ford Wheaton, who, like, has some, I don't know what the deal with him is. I've heard some character things, but I don't know how legit that is. And then the Arkansas guy as well, Matt Landers, who ran like a 4.3 out 6.4. Like, so you have this ton of tall, fast guys, but I don't know. I think you can probably pick one of those if you want a deep threat. Go ahead.
If we're doing the name test,
Yeah.
all three of those guys sound like footnotes to me.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm just gonna be honest with you. Sorry, that's
no, interior offensive line, for me, John Gaines and Sidy Sow were both high level testers on the interior offensive line, like elite athletes. Sidy Sow is an older prospect, John Gaines is younger. John Gaines is from UCLA, Sidy Sow is, I think, from Eastern Michigan. But those are the kind of guys I'd look at, and Sidy Sow is like 330 plus, so he's a mauling guard who has a 9.6 something RAS, like really high level, had a good 3-cone. John Gaines had like a 7.31 3-cone at interior offensive line, which is crazy for a guy that's over 300 pounds. Like, that's really, really good for a guy that's over 300 pounds. So just in terms of athletic, and they seem to be in that 4th, 5th round range in most draft people. Like at linebacker, I guess I have Noah Sewell, who I think I remember seeing Betts tweet, like, why isn't anybody good on this guy? And then he watched tape and realized he was soft. And then he realized why nobody was in on him. And he was like immediately out. So that's definitely a concern with Sewell, right? Where if he's soft and he's not able to get that done, that's a huge problem. But I don't know where that's at. I haven't really watched his tape. So I'm looking for a guy with that kind of size is my main thing. And Luke, do you have anybody at corner that you like late?
That I like late? Yeah. I've got a couple that I think will be there late that I like. A ton of Minnesotans or Vikings fans, I guess, are probably Iowans, like Riley Moss, the white corner, the one. Wild.
He's actually actually legit too.
I'd take him in the 4th round. I like him a lot. Yeah.
His I didn't know anything about him until the combine, and I was watching him at the combine.
Yeah, like, exploded the 3-cone.
Yeah, he's scooting. I was like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, he's athletic, and you can see it. And it kind of when you're that good of an athlete, everything gets a lot easier. You get to kind of play on easy mode a little bit, because if you screw up, you have the agility to get back into phase. I actually like Rajon Wright out of Oregon State. I think he's falling a little bit more than he should, because we don't have testing data on him, which was due to a thumb injury. But that thumb injury probably won't affect his career or anything. It just makes us have less information, and I think people are wary of that. But he jumped out to me when I was watching Addison, and he actually he gave Jordan Addison hell. And I was like, oh, who's this cat on the Beavers? He's killing it. I like, for the same reason, Mekhi Garner, who was doing the same thing with Jonathan Mingo, is really running with him, even though he did not test as well. I like him as a deeper day 3 guy. I don't think I have a 4th round on him. He's more of a 6th-ish, 5th-ish, because I think there are some other limitations, if I recall, about him. But he's a little bit more of hashtag my guy. There's a couple of guys to watch in day 3. I must bring up, it's not a corner, but I must bring up Deuce Vaughn, my favorite little mouse.
Real, Luke. That was my big reveal. I love Deuce Vaughn.
Sorry, I did it. Hit it then. Sorry, I took your thunder.
No, it's great. I'm excited. I totally agree. Please tell me what you like about Deuce, because I'm totally in on Deuce.
Okay, so the thing about Deuce, he's 5'5". It's like he's a mouse. He is so small. You get small running backs, but it works to his advantage sometimes, because low center of gravity makes him have pretty good contact through balance. And he's a physical dude. You'll see him in pass pro, and it's funny. I mean, he's not getting, big influences on guys, but he throws himself at it. He does what you can.
He reminds me a little bit of Jaylen Warren in Pittsburgh. Just small. Okay. Diminutive, you think, and then you watch him play, and it's like, no, this guy's playing football.
They had this dude lead blocking over there at times, like lead blocking on a quarterback run or something. Like, he can do that, but he's very, I'm looking for electric in space.
Absolutely.
And he definitely uses that. Like, running back is maybe one of the only positions where being smaller can be an advantage, and he uses that. You got to worry about durability and stuff. Is this dude going to survive the NFL? Because he's built like a Smurf. But I don't know. I love this stupid little twerp. I love him so much.
So a running back that I love, guys, and he's more of a day 2 guy, although medicals might knock him down a little bit. And if I say that, you might know who I'm talking about, is Tyjae Spears. And Tyjae Spears reminds me of, if you guys remember, Kenneth Dixon, who was in the 2016 draft with like Zeke and Derrick Henry. And I loved Kenneth Dixon out of Louisiana Tech. No, that's a different one. That's Anthony Dixon.
Oh, that's a different one. Okay,
But like Tyjae Spears knows how to read the field. He's got incredible open field vision. Like if he gets out in the open field, he's basically going to take it to the house, even though he's not that fast, because he just knows exactly where to go. And I think he's a really good receiver too for what he is. It's just, I think medicals are the question with him. So if he's somebody that drops to day 3, I'd love it if the Vikings picked him up.
It's a great year to need running back on day 3.
I think Tyjae Spears could be a bell cow for a team, honestly. If all that works out, I don't think you'd need to put him in a committee. Obviously, it'd be sweet to have a dude, and then also have Madison and all these other guys you're excited about and be able to rotate him. But if he goes to a place that just needs like starting running back, I could legit see him winning that job.
I think it's weird because I think a lot of draft teams like see guys who are 5'9", which Spears is 5'0", and think that like they're not able to carry the load to be bell cow backs. But if you look at like half of the best running backs over the past 15, 20 years, they're like 5'9", 5'10". So the narrative's kind of weird to me, but I agree with you, Luke. I think you can be a bell cow back who's your number one back in your room.
It's a center of gravity thing. One of the biggest boxes for me with running backs is, can you take a shot to the kind of center of gravity? Can you take a tackle around the hips and bounce off of that? Because that's where defenders are aiming. And when a defender gets exactly where he's aiming on you and cannot bring you down, there's a balance to that. That's a very specific athleticism that Dalvin Cook has in all kinds of spades. The top guys in this draft all have it in spades. And when you're shorter, that is just easier to do. It's just physics.
Yep. At that point, it comes down to how well your body holds up and how fucking tough you are. Straight up. Like, are you tough enough to play that position? Because it's really, really hard. That's why I want to double down on Deuce Vaughn. And I just love him. But the other thing I'll throw in, just the only guy that I haven't heard a lot of, I already teased him a little bit. I really do like Sean Tucker out of Syracuse. I think he's got a little bit of that. He's got a little more size. He might be able to do the bell cow thing for you. You can use him in the passing game. He's kind of underrated. I think he'll almost definitely be there on day 3. I really like him. I have only paid attention to quarterbacks and, for some reason, running backs this year. So that's my 2 cents. I don't have a lot to add about anything else you guys have said. I think it's been a very thorough, wonderful breakdown. And let's hope it's all for naught, because we trade the entire world for Anthony Richardson. Clip that shit. Yeah. All right. Guys, this was fantastic. This was super fun. One of our longer pods in a while. I hope everybody who's listening enjoyed it. Yeah. Luke, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah.
Delight to have you.
Thank you for joining us, and thanks for putting up with us we're getting on an hour and 45 minutes. Which might be our longest pod of all time. I really appreciate you sticking around.
Now I don't have to listen to it, so
there you go. There you go.
You don't have to listen to it. All right.
It saves me time on the other end.
Exactly. All right. So, Luke, I mentioned this at the top, but you can find him at Luke Braun NFL, Braun. You can listen to his awesome podcast, Locked On Vikings. And you can find him on Minnesota Football Party. And don't forget to check out his Patreon, patreon.com/Luke Braun NFL. Matt, you can find on Twitter at Fries Football. You can find me on Instagram at You've Been Gregg. You can find the show at Kindred Skulls on Twitter. You can search for us on YouTube. All of our video content goes up there. And guys, have a great night. This was super fun. And Luke, we like to do sometimes digital hugs here on this podcast, so I'm reaching out right now, and I'm giving you
here, just right here. Bring it in,
Luke. Luke is officially better than at Nick Olson NFL, who hates digital hugs.
forgot about Nick.
True. And Lola
Nick,
Bunny's better than Judy Hopps.
So, all right.
Nick, we missed you. I'm sorry I forgot to plug you. That's not personal. Okay, guys. Have a great night. Love you both. Bye.
Skol Vikings.
Go Vikes!
Goal, baby.
The first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. And we'll all cheer on behind, and we'll score the